All right, welcome back to Waste Some Time with Jason Green. I am Jason Green. That's how the name of the show works. Got to get right to it. Warrant getting ready to go out on the road again this month on a 30th anniversary of Cherry Pie Tour. Can you believe it's been 30 years? We're going to talk all things Warrant after this. Just wanna waste some time with you. Sometimes it seems too good to be true. Nobody I'd rather waste time with than you. All right, we are going to welcome the one and only Joey Allen.
What's going on, Jason?
How are you, Joey? I'm really glad that you're able to join me on this Memorial Day.
God bless our troops and all our fallen heroes and people that make it easier to do what we do, brother.
Absolutely, 100%. And obviously, this is going to air later, and people will watch it when they watch it. But this is an important day, so we should mention that.
Absolutely.
So, Joey, before we get too deep into things, I got to point out, in full disclosure, my connections to you that you might not even know about. So here is my band right now. You can see it on the screen. And there are two interesting connections in my band, the Sin City Rejects. I don't usually plug my band during these interviews, but this one relates to you. So in the picture on the far left, next to me on the right, that is Mad Max Mazursky, who is the original drummer for Warrant.
That is Mad Max. Yeah, absolutely.
He actually founded the band in 1984 in high school, and he named the band. And you know the story. It's an odd story, but somehow Warrant is based off of Warren DeMartini.
That's what I've heard. Yep.
So he didn't last. He did it for a few years, and then he decided that him and the original singer were going to move on. And obviously, Eric and Joey continued the Warrant brand, and we'll talk about that in a bit. And then to the far right in the picture, that is Johnny Rocks, and Johnny Rocks performed in a band with you called Targa. And
yes, sir.
Terrible name, by the way. I don't even know what it means. Targga. Do you know what it means?
I think it was 2 R's.
2 R's. Sorry.
I think the reason why there were 2 R's is because we couldn't get away with 1 R because Porsche owned the copyright on that. So I don't remember who named it. It might have been the singer at the time. The singer was a Japanese guy named Mike Black. But yeah, Johnny and I were in that band for quite some time and had a good time together. A lot of fun.
Now, Joe, you tell me if this story's true. He tells me that there was a night that you went out partying and the band was disappointed in you because the next day, because you stayed out and got drunk and I guess you didn't show up for rehearsal. But he told me that the people you were partying with, and you confirmed this, were Robin Crosby, Steve Clark, and Phil Collins.
Correct.
So, and 2 of them are no longer with us.
Yeah, whenever I see Phil, we always unfortunately talk about that, and yeah, but that was a fun night. And I mean, who would expect you to show up at rehearsal, or maybe it was the recording studio the next day, but I was living in Hollywood and it was still down in OC and it was just, the commute was getting tough. And so I just, it was kind of, maybe they let me go. Maybe I quit. I don't remember, but we're still, Johnny and I are still tight with the singer, Michael. I see the drummer every once in a while at NAMM. There was 2 Michaels in the band. There was a Mike Black and a Michael Clemens. But yeah, I think Johnny's has got some CDs out there, and there might be a few that I played on.
Yeah, I believe that they're available.
It's like 80, dude. That's 85, 86. We're talking. That's a long time ago, huh?
Well, yeah, for sure. And you played a lot in before Warrant, including playing with Lars Ulrich and Lloyd Grant. Both played with Metallica. Obviously, Lars still is.
Right.
So tell me a little bit about how that comes about.
We back in the day, and you can probably remember this. There was the Recycler. It was the newspaper that you could buy anything in or from. You could buy a car, you could buy dishwasher from it, but you could also there was a help wanted for bands. And I think there was like sections, if I remember it right. There was like bassist wanted or bassist available, guitarist wanted, guitarist available, and then drummers. And I remember opening up one time and there was an ad from this drummer looking for a guitar player and a bass player. And I was in a band with a guy that played guitar. And I said, why don't you try bass? Let's go check this out. And so it was Lars and Lloyd. And they were looking to, it was way pre-Metallica. I think we jammed for about 4, 5, 6 months. And then Lars went back to Denmark on a 2 or 3 week stay. And while he was gone, we were itching to jam. So I'm like, Lloyd, let's get another drummer and jam, dude. And he's like, oh, I'm going to stay with Lars. And I said, okay. And I went on and did my thing. I went in and did something else. But yeah, it was a fun time. And look at how well he's done now, right?
Yeah, I guess it worked out for him.
Absolutely.
Lars, that is.
Yes.
And like I said, we're talking a little bit all over the place about pre-Warrant. But what I find most interesting is that you first jammed with Eric Turner.
Probably more like 83. I was in a band called Nightmare 2 in Orange County, and he wanted to jam, and through a virtual friend, he came in and we played together for a while. We played some originals. I remember we played Parasite by Kiss. We played $1 Billion Babies by Alice. And we played Sweet Emotion or Sick as a Dog, whatever, some Aerosmith stuff. So yeah, Eric and I did that. And then I went my own way and went into a band pre-Target called Suspect. And he went up to LA and ended up joining Warrant. I actually, how you go and you go through all your old stuff. I was at my parents' a little while ago going through old stuff, and I found a letter that Eric Turner had mailed me in like 84 or 85 with Warrant tickets to the Troubadour with Max in the band and Adam and Josh and everybody. And I was in my band Suspect. We were playing the Troubadour, and I never went and saw them until I knew I was going to audition for them.
You held out.
It's cool to see that old stuff. You know what I mean?
It's, I grew up in New York City, and as a kid, come 1989, you see Warrant on MTV, and there's no internet. And if you lived on the East Coast, you just kind of assumed that bands like that, just here they are. You never really saw the struggle. If you lived in California, you did. And so Warrant was far from an overnight sensation, even though you guys were creating a buzz, and when you joined the band, were playing pretty big gigs and were known. But it took a minute for the first album to happen. So tell me what it's like when you first joined Warrant.
The band was already drawing really well in Southern California, and I got in, by a freak. Eric and I ran into each other on the Strip. I had moved to Hollywood from Orange County, so I was living in Hollywood auditioning for a bunch of different bands, and I was working at Jackson Charvel Guitars at the time. So I would go every day. I'd go to San Dimas and back, and then when I ran into Eric on the corner of Sunset and Doheny. I'm sure you know where that is. It's right across the street from Gil Turner's. I think we were both going to get a bottle of booze and go to the clubs. And at that time, he just said, "Hey, we're looking for a new lead guitar player." And I said, "I'm your man. Let's check it out." And then we went out and had fun that night. And I remember auditioning at the time, and they were managed by Prince's manager, or one of them, Jamie Shoup, with Ruffalo Fardinoli and some other Italian guys, for their names. But I got in there, and it was fast. Everything was fast paced. Gig. They were just relentless promoters. And that's part of the draw, was how into it they were and how together they had it as far as promotion was concerned. And, we built stage sets for every show. And it was just like, a magical time of being in the clubs at that time, and then it took about a year until we got a deal. And it was actually pretty anticlimactic, the show we got a deal on.
Yeah. Well, was Janie Lane was sick, right? Possibly with chicken pox?
Yeah. I had chicken pox. It was at the country club. We used to play 3 shows a month. So we play a Friday night and a Saturday night at the country club, which I think was about 900 or 1,000 seats. And then on Sunday night, we'd go hit either the Roxy, the Whiskey, or the Troubadour, or maybe even Gazzarri's. Maybe not Gazzarri's, but the Roxy, the Whiskey, or the Troubadour on a Sunday night. And it was the first night of the weekend shows, and he was sick. He had the chicken pox, and we're like, "What do you want to do?" And he's like, "I'll get through, 8 or 9 songs." And he did, and he was out the back door when we came off stage. abbreviated set, and that was the set that Ron Oberman and Brett Hartman were at, and the rest there is history with Columbia Records.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. But before that, tell me a little bit about the Prince demo that you guys made for Paisley Park, and what happened with that.
Well, I don't know if anybody's ever told this story, but Jerry Dixon, God bless him, one of my best buddies in the world, did an ad for Tower Records back in the day that was in BAM, and it was him leaning up against a post, flipping off, and it said, "For all of you that want to hear your record loud or your music loud, raise your hands." And Jamie saw this ad and, thought Jerry was an attractive young man and needed somebody like that. She was managing some soap stars down in Puerto Rico, right? Soap operas, right? So she went found Jerry somehow through, whatever phone numbers and asked him if he was interested in acting. And he said, "Absolutely not. I'm in a rock band. I'm interested in music, and I'm not, and thank you very much for your interest, but no, thank you. If you would like to come down and see my band, that'd be great." And she did. And she ended up managing the band for quite some time. Now, she was the one that was one of the ones that helped Prince, brought Prince into the world, whatever you want to call it, of music entertainment as far as, the majors were concerned. So she went back to him and said, "Hey, I've got a band. They're young." It's when Bon Jovi was rocking and all these other bands were rocking. And he had his Paisley Park imprint, and he gave us $5,000 to go cut a demo. We did it with Ed Cherney, producer. Ed did it for free. We just had to get him some, what's the best way to put it? Some cocaine.
So that's one way to put it.
So he could mix the record. I mean, let's just call it what it is. I think we did it at Westlake Recorders was down. It was a brick building on Melrose, maybe, if I don't forget myself here. And I think it was Ed Cherney and Ed did it. I think we did Down Boys, Fatal Attraction, and Tease Machine. And Prince heard the demo and he's like, "Great, I want to see a video." And we did a live video at the country club gig. And then he was done. He was like, "Nope, not interested. Pass." And then we went through some other iterations and different demos we did with the guy. We did one with Stevie Salas producing for A&M for the Bill and Ted's movie franchise. And then we did, I think that's it, maybe another demo or two, but that's about it. And then one of them helped get us signed with that gig. But that's the Prince tie-in.
Do you think there's any truth to the story that Prince said that boy can't dance or something like that? Or do you think that's a created story?
I don't know. I'd have to ask Jamie. We saw her. She came to a gig a few years ago. Now with the social media, I caught up with her, and she came out to a gig. I surprised all the guys. I brought her backstage, and they're tripping out. And so I'd have to ask her again.
Yeah, and supposedly Prince watched the tape and said something along the lines of "That boy can't dance," the singer, and then passed and said they could use the demo for something else. Yeah. So here's an interesting thing. You mentioned the song for Bill and Ted Game of War, and that song should have been on the Bill and Ted soundtrack. Why did it not make it?
I don't remember the politics behind it. It might have been, if it was an A&M soundtrack, it might have been because A&M ended up passing on the band. Mm-hmm. There was a guy named Aaron Jacobus at A&M that was messing with us for a while, and he was into us, he wasn't into us, he was into us, he wasn't into us, and he ended up ultimately passing. So that might have been a reason why. Or maybe just, movies are movies. There's music directors and movies. Maybe they didn't like it. Maybe it didn't fit their vibe. I don't know. Funny thing is that they just used Sure Feels Good for the reboot of that movie a few years ago during the Super Bowl.
Yeah. Which is how crazy. And again, another one of those small world things that happens. But with movie soundtracks, you're right. There's so many politics involved. If the label doesn't have the artist, they might not use it. They're going to push their artists. And like you said, also, Warrant wasn't known yet. So they might have said, well, we'll go with the bands that are already established.
Yeah, I don't know why. I mean, we'd have to ask the people that made the decisions. We did. It's like you asked me earlier what it was like. you literally, when Prince passes on you, you think it's just going to crush your soul, because the guy was such an amazing musician and writer and performer. And it was really like such a small speed bump to us because we were just so determined to make it happen. And when you get 5 guys that have the same mindset, it's hard to stop it, and so even though we would hit these roadblocks or these speed bumps, we would just barrel through them with not a lot of care, to be honest with you. If we learned something, it would be great. And we did from a lot of it. A lot of the failures you always learn and you move on and hopefully not repeat them. But it was nothing that stood in our way at that time, for sure.
Yeah. If you go on YouTube and you watch Warrant at Gazzarri's in 1987, you can see that this band was already way more polished and ahead of things. You had spots in the set and you had gimmicks, and Janie could talk to the crowd, and you could tell that this was not a band that was going to be out struggling. This, it was going. Someone was going to sign you up, and you could tell that it was going places. So talk a little bit about it, because you guys finally get signed. Something that, obviously it's a relief. After Prince passing and all these things, you finally get signed to Columbia. And so tell me what it's like when you guys first start playing again, knowing that you're on the next level.
Well, it was Brett Hartman, a guy that worked at a record store that went to work for, he was like an intern at Columbia, and he brought Ron Oberman out. So those 2 guys really were instrumental in getting us over to Columbia, and Ron had, I think, the signing authority. But Brett was really the guy that took us over there. So once we had that, the biggest, at that time, Columbia was the biggest record label in the world. That machine behind you, then you just start working on a record. Janie had written a bunch of songs. We had played a bunch of them live. We went out and picked producers. We met with Roy Thomas Baker, Bob Edgwin, Bo Hill, a few other guys that I don't remember right off the top of my head. But you're just on this ride going, okay, here it goes, it starts, and then you go in and you make the record, and then the record was in the can and done, and we went out on the road before it even came out. We went out in the fall, I think, of '88. Mm-hmm. We went out with the DeMalls and did a club run from west to east. And so before that even came out, and then we might have been trying to, because I get the 2 records confused when they come out, because you do promo tours. Used to do promo tours where you don't necessarily play, but you're going and you might do 3 or 4 radio hits in a day,
right?
Where you're promoting, here comes the first single airs, blah, blah, blah. So I remember at one point we were in Europe. It might have been on that run. No, we were in Europe when it went gold. So we were probably still in California when it was released. Or maybe we were just getting ready to go out with Paul Stanley. I don't remember.
It starts to run since then. It's interesting, though, that record came out in January of '89, which seems like a little bit of an uncommon time for a record to come out. It's a strange time. But you guys were on it. You guys were promoting. You guys were on MTV. You guys were doing, the MTV talk shows, and then comes Dial MTV, and you guys were out working it, and you did some dates with, I think, Brittany Fox.
We did, yeah. We were like touring whores. We would tour with anybody. We did 2 or 3 weeks with Eddie Money on the East Coast in colleges. There's a lot. There's one thing that I don't hear a lot of guys in successful bands really talk about at length is the machine that's behind a band. And Columbia Records, it's a business, and there are marketing guys in there, there are sales guys in there, and then for every one marketing guy, there's 50 people behind them, helping them do their gigs. So there's in radio, local promotion, where you have a radio guy that knows all the radio people in their area, maybe like a tri-state area or a quad-state area where they know everybody here. And so you get to know these people when you're on the road. It's not that you just sleep all day, get up and play a gig all night. It's get up at 8 a.m., go do 2 or 3 radio hits and go to check. It's a full-time gig, but all these people that are part of that team, it's massive, absolutely massive. There's not, like a half a dozen people that do it.
Right.
There's the band, there's the management, there's the record label, there's the crew, There's the local promotions. There's all the radio people that get involved. There are the distributors of CDs and records back in the day that we don't necessarily have right now. But all of those people that were part of our success deserve, a tip of the hat, because it truly takes a team. And you know this, Jason. I'm not telling you something you don't know, but a lot of people out there might not know how massive a team has to be to get a hit single out there.
It's like a race car, and everybody sees the car, but they don't see the pit crew and all the people who really do maybe the hardest work to make sure that this is ready to go. And with the band, that's certainly part of it. Was Jerry Weintraub involved with you guys?
Jerry, in the very beginning, this is a great story. So we're working. I'm in the band now, and we're working in the clubs. And Jamie Shoup, is managing us, and she can't get us a record deal. Okay, and we're getting frustrated. And at the same time, this other management company came in, and it was Weintraub Entertainment, right? It was Tom Hewlett, Jerry Weintraub, and then a guy named Eddie Winterick. And it was when Tom was still with Jerry Weintraub, and they managed, the Beach Boys, Neil Diamond, they had Concerts West, which did, Elvis, the Stones. And I mean, Tom Hewlett, one of our managers, took Zeppelin on one of their first northwestern tours in a station wagon, So there's a lot of history there, but that's the connection, is that Tom and Jerry Weintraub were a part of Weintraub Entertainment, and then Tom broke off. So when Tom broke off, Tom said, I'll leave you with Neil Diamond and whoever else he was managing. I'm going to take the Beach Boys, or one of them. Maybe he took Mike Love or somebody, and I'm taking my new band Warrant with me. And he started Hewlett Entertainment at that time, or maybe it was called Concerts West still. And then that's when Eddie Winterick was in, and John Meglin, who now is a big concert promoter. And
this is like picking fantasy teams. You know what I mean? Like you're divided. You guys are fortunate to be included with this. Because for those who really don't know, Jerry Weintraub was one of the most powerful people in Hollywood, movies as well. Not just you got Elvis, John Denver. There's an amazing biography about his life. And so when you have these people and they're choosing who's going to get Warrant, you have something. So I want to talk a little bit about Dirty, Rotten, Filthy, Stinking Rich. 1989 is when it's released. You recorded in 1988. And so Beau Hill is the producer. Beau Hill comes off of Rat. He's successful. He's a high sought out guy at that time. But what I want to ask you about, and I'm sure you're sick of these questions, but Beau Hill was known for bringing in studio musicians. And some bands claim that he brought in musicians and they didn't know. In this case, the stories are all over the place. Wikipedia says something. Every guy in the band says something. You're going to set it straight, Joey, because I think people should know exactly what it was. Beau Hill says, and that it wasn't a secret, that he thought your guitar solos were weak in the studio and that he wanted to bring somebody in, and he brought in a guy named Mike Slamer. It should have been Slammer, by the way. That's a missed opportunity. Mike Slammer, much cooler than Mike Slammer. And I'll be honest with you, for years I thought his name was Mike Slammer. And you guys are kind of presented with it and agree on it. Now, you're younger guys. It's your first time making a record. You've got a famous producer. I don't think you're in a position to fight this. So now the stories are, well, there's a bunch of them. One story is that no one in Warrant played on that album except for Jamie Lane. Okay, that's one theory. The other one is that all of the guitar solos on that first album were played by Mike. Now, I know I'm dragging this out, but you guys were playing a lot of these songs live. For example, Down Boys, Heaven. So it's not like you didn't play solos to these. And if you watch your playing of those songs in the old videos, you could see that you weren't a beginner musician by any means. Now, being in a studio is a different thing, and also maybe Beau Hill has his idea of what it should be. So now you said it straight. What happened?
Well, first of all, I'll preface it with this. I mean, when you sign a band, number one in Warrant, there's no Ed Van Halen's. There never has been. I can certainly hold my own. So can Eric. And I think that at the time, what Bo thought we did need was like an Ed Van Halen type. And neither of us were prepared to do that, you know? So he brought it to our management, and our management brought it to us, and we all sat down, and this was what, you know, this is what he wants to do, blah, 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 blah. And it wasn't something that I felt I had a lot of say to, you know. It wasn't like, look, you know, we're getting ready to make this record, and he doesn't think it's going to be, you know, that we're going to be able to pull off solos here and there. And so it happened. Of course, Mike played on the record, and he played, like, let's go, for instance, solos. Big Talk. Big Talk is me on the first record. Down Boys is Mike. The Uncle Tom's is on the second one. So we could go song by song by song by song. He played solos, not all the solos. Some of the stingers, some of them he didn't play, some of them I played. There's a few that Eric played. But it wasn't something that we were necessarily on board with. It was more like we felt like you're kind of backed into a corner, and that's what you have to do. You know, Mike is absolutely a wonderful human being. I ended up taking guitar lessons because I got pissed. I'm like, this isn't cool. I don't like this feeling. I wished that he would have worked more with us. He seemed to, he had so much, Bo had so much going on. He had, you know, record from Winger going on, record from Rat going on, a record from Warrant going on. He was managing Winger. He had tons of stuff going on. And I think he just wanted to get the project done. So that's what happened. And then on the second record, and Mike didn't play any rhythms. So all the rhythm guitars, some of the solos are me, some of them are Mike. All the drums are Steven, all the bass is Jerry, all the vocals are everybody. You know, and then that continued a little less on the second record.
Okay, yeah.
And then it was,
so,
you know,
I mean, some of the songs, I think Sometimes She Cries to me sounds like was probably Mike. I mean, not that Eric's not a good guitar player and didn't get better as he went, but when you hear things like that, it didn't necessarily match with what you would have thought Warrant's style was at the time. So on that first record, Mike plays no rhythm. You and Eric play all the rhythm guitars on the record.
Right. So there were literally times where we were queued up to play a solo, like Heaven. The whole front end of Heaven is me. The very last cadence is Mike, because I couldn't get out of the solo the way Bo Hill wanted me to get out of the solo. So I would say the whole front 70 to 80% of the solo is me. I couldn't get out of it the way he wanted. We tried. Then Mike was sitting next to me in the studio, and I would hand him the guitar because it's the same tone, it's the same rig, it's everything.
Right.
Boom, here you go. Gets out of the solo, it's comped together. Now you've got a Mike and a Joey solo, you know? So there's things like that happen with Bo. And again, you know, really in our defense is that a producer to me should never do something like that. You should just work with the band. It's like what Michael Wagner did on Dog Eat Dog. He worked with the band. You know, we spent 2 or 3 days just getting guitar tones with Michael Wagner. Bo used to make Jerry Dixon boil his bass strings.
Oh man!
I mean, there was a $250,000 budget, then he wouldn't let us spend any money on bass strings. You know, so no disrespect to Bo. Everybody has a different memory of how they remember things, but that's mine. It's fairly accurate because I was there. I spent a lot of time with Mike. Mike's still a good friend of mine. Mike came to a show a few years ago, and I was surprised, which was great. And his wife works at Sony. She's an executive there. So the relationship's still there with Mike, but there's no relationship with Bo. So you do the homework.
I understand. You know, I interviewed Eddie Ojeda not too long ago from Twisted Sister. And I never have to edit these interviews, but some of the things he said when it came to Bo Hill needed to be edited. They brought Reb Beach in on the record Love Is for Suckers. Bo made some claims that Eddie didn't necessarily agree with. And so, that sort of became Bo's style. And, you know, And it seems a bit ridiculous. Now, on the second record, Bo comes back. Whose decision is that? Because I think at that point, you guys must be a little bit not down with that, so to speak.
I don't remember. I don't remember at that point. You know, we did like 16 months of touring, Jason, behind that record. And I think at that point, you know, and a lot of the second record was written on the road, and we demoed. I think we demoed down at Criteria in Miami. And Bo came back in. And by that time, not only had I, you know, had a tour under my belt, but I've been taking lessons from Mike. So there was less Mike on that second record. But he was still in there. You know, there's again, where part of the solo is me, some of it's Mike's. You know, there's Uncle Tom's Cabin, you know, is intertwined both of us. You look at things like Bed of Roses is me. There's just I have to look at the track listing to remember Train. Rainmaker is all me. Yeah, so it's just but it just got to be after the second record. We just wanted a break from Bo because I didn't want to do that. I think we kind of really put our foots down after that.
Well, and then you know, Bo's worried about having virtuosos on the record, so you bring in CC DeVille. No offense to CC DeVille, but he plays the cherry pie. He plays the cherry pie solo, and I get it. Although I don't feel like it was capitalized on. I don't feel like, you know, I feel like that could have been more of a marketing thing. You know, obviously CC wasn't brought in because he was Yngwie, you know.
It was, we wanted to get on the Flesh and Blood tour with Poison, and we thought he'd help out. I mean, we were tight with all those guys anyways. But it was just like, hey, that song was added late. That record was already baked. We were done. We thought we were done. And then that song came up, and we're like, well, you know, what now? And let's go get Cecil. So we went and sent a car to pick him up at noon one day when he was probably just going to bed. Mm-hmm. He came in a little ragged. And I remember, and this is no disrespect, because Cecil, if you've heard him play lately, he plays great. He's sober. Yes. He's been sober forever. And we're still really tight. We live about 10 or 15 minutes away from each other. But he when he left, because he was a little wrecked that day, Bo made some comment to me like, you know, you'd be a welcome change after that, because Cecil just came in and he's like a bull in a china shop at that time. It was fun.
Bo needed Mike Slamer. Mike Slamer needed to take care of Cece's parts.
No Mike Slamer on Cherry Pie.
Yeah, it's apparent. But listen, song becomes huge and everything works out the way it's supposed to. Before we move on, you know, I got to go back to the first record for 1 second. And before I do, I want to say that I think, Joey, I think it's good that you speak about the truth of this. It's, you know, because there's so many mixed stories, and to say that Warrant didn't play on the record is a lame thing for people to have that thought. And before you were able to instantly go on the internet like you can now, for years people just spread these rumors, and then you had to go places and have people go, oh, well, they didn't play on their record. And so I think it's good that you speak about it, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. You were the victim of a producer as a young band.
You know, I don't want to play the victim card here. I mean, if the stuff Mike played on the record is great. You know, I play it live now. Mm-hmm. You know, some of his riffs. So no disrespect to Mike by any means, but I think there's different producers and they deal with artists different ways, and that was his way of dealing with it. Good, we're over that. We finally got onto the third record with Michael Wagner. You know, and it's like, if you go and listen to Cherry Pie, go listen to the solo and Rainmaker and tell me what's wrong with that. Uh-huh. You know what I mean? I remember sitting there cutting that solo with Jimmy Hoyson, which was our engineer at the time, and Bo was in the vocal booth on the phone, taking care, because he managed Winger at the time, taking care of Winger business. I remember he used to open the vocal booth door and listen to the solo and go, "Oh, do it again," boom, you know, and Jimmy Hoyson really, from my experience, produced a lot of that record, you know. And I think some of the other guys in the band would agree. I mean, Jimmy was the man. We've run into him at a gig in Pittsburgh. He came out, and he's still a good friend. He'd love to do another one, just him, you know. But yeah, I mean, sticking up for ourselves, you know, it was still the experience it was. and we definitely played on our records, and that's what it is. I've never shied away from it. I don't know if anybody else has in this band.
The other guys, because I was researching to see what the other guys said, and over the years, the answers have changed. I think now things are what they are. Your band is, successful and touring on the 30th year anniversary of Cherry Pie. And I think it's a different time and people know that you can play. Like you said, you play these songs live every day. But I think there was a time when you just want that to go away. And so maybe some guys said.
Probably in the beginning, after I left the band in 95, 96, I talked pretty openly about it. If somebody asked me, it wasn't like I was going to walk around with a shirt on that said, Mike Slamer played some of the solos on my first two records, because it's something that you feel, in the beginning when your first record, and here we go, you could be the arpeggio king, and the producer could go, that's not going to fit this song. Slow down. And if you can't slow down and play something melodic with less notes, the producer's got to do something. So part of me gets it. The other part of me, it wasn't a fun experience because it was kind of like you're just new,
Yeah.
and you don't know how to react. You're thinking, wow, here's the band. I think we can get through this. The producer's supposed to help out. And if he could help out on songs like Rainmaker and Bed of Roses and 32 Pennies in a Ragu Jar, all which I played solos on, why weren't all the rest workable? You know what I mean?
That's right. And I don't think solos like Heaven, the ones you're saying were harder solos than that. So some of the ones that he got, I know he only played the end of that, but it was apparent that if you could play those, it's just a victim of production. But so,
yeah.
Listen, the bottom line is you got 2 double platinum records out of this. You got countless hits. One of the few bands to be able to get 2 ballads off each record. If you got to the second ballad at that point, you knew you were going platinum. You could go gold on 1. A lot of the bands at the time, maybe they had 1 ballad. When you get to 2, and you guys did it on both records, you know that things are huge. So no matter what happened in that studio, you guys were Warrant, and you guys reaped the benefits of it. And by your third record, you fixed the Bow Hill problem. I got one more slight controversy to ask you about. Down Boys and Bye Bye Love from the Cars, right? What do you think?
I think that's the same riff. And I think that if you look at Panorama on the Cars, I think that was their third or fourth record. There's a song called Down Boys. So at the time, I heard that Rick Ocasek wanted to sue because of that riff. It just so happens that Janie's from a Cleveland suburb. I think the Cars guys were from Ohio, Akron, maybe. Am I wrong? I'm
not positive, but it sounds
maybe they met at MIT or Berkeley or something, because I know Elliot Easton was a Berkeley cat, I think. But I think just by, look, we all grow up on music, and there's there's nobody that's a 110% original. I could pick on a singer from a very popular LA band that sold tens of millions of records that sounds like the singer in Nazareth, the same vibe. Okay. I'm not going to name the band, but I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. And it's like, so you have these musical influences all your life, man. I grew up on Kiss, Cheap Trick, Thin Lizzy, Maiden, Priest. So there's going to be some of that creeps into your DNA. It just does. And I don't think Janie ever went out of his way to rip anything off. He might have been tooling around with the riff and gone, that's catchy. Well, of course it's catchy, because it's the riff from Bye Bye Love that Roy Thomas Baker recorded with the Cars.
Sometimes you write a song to another song, the idea. I want to write a song like this. And you set out with that as a blueprint. And maybe sometimes it's too similar. But I got to ask you, do you think that maybe Bow Hill should have caught that and said, maybe we should change this a bit?
I don't know. I don't know how much of a music fan Bow Hill is. Not every producer's a big music fan. Do you know what I mean? I've met some that are.
You didn't have a lawsuit.
Well, there was some lawsuits, but not for that one.
Right.
You know,
Yes.
you know.
Excuse me. Yeah.
You know, and look, Janie. I mean, if you looked at other songs he wrote, if you looked at, you know, the whole volume of stuff he wrote for the first three records that I was involved with, there's some really great stuff there, and you can't take one snippet of one song and go, oh, the guy's a plagiarism freak. He's ripping everybody off left and right. I mean, look at like Motley, you know, and Motley's like Kiss Light, right? I mean, different sounding, but sure, the first and second record, sure, I saw them live with Kiss at Irvine Meadows during that time. I mean, they were like a mini Kiss at that time, you know. No disrespect to Motley, but
No.
your influences creep in. They just creep in. You know, Sweet, Kickstart My Heart, right? Have you heard that? Have you ever heard the Sweet song?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, it just happens. It's in your DNA. I don't fault anybody for it. I don't think anybody's going out of their way to rip somebody off. I just think it happens, man.
Well, I don't think this was a Led Zeppelin situation, where Willie Dixon wrote a song or whatever. And like you said, you can't go and look at Warrant's catalog and find other major blatant examples. And so I think, these things happen.
Yeah.
But again, luckily, you didn't end up having to pay the Cars a bunch of money, and it's, because at that time, that could have really, really hurt an up-and-coming band. And we should point out, Warrant was playing that song since at least probably 86,
Yeah, definitely. I got in the band in 87, but I know they were playing it in 86.
And it's very similar, and these are some of the things that I wonder with Beau Hill. The songs, a lot of them that song is the song. It didn't change much. Maybe some of the backgrounds changed, but the structure of the song and the solo that was played live that Eric played was just fine, So it's one of those things. But you brought up seeing Kiss, and so I've got to ask you, Joey, is it true that we can see you in the movie Kiss Meets the Phantom?
If I point it out, yes, sir. I'm on my buddy's shoulders. My buddy,
how cool!
Yeah. I got tickets through like KMET or KLOS. They did that show at Magic Mountain, which I'm sure you've driven by Magic Mountain. Mm-hmm. If you've gone from Southern California to Northern California, you drive past that. And I went up there with my sister and one of her friends, and me and my buddy Jeff Miller, this guy that lives in Knoxville, Tennessee now. He's one of my hillbilly buddies, brethren. And we went to that show, and it was amazing, But I think there was about 10,000 tickets given out, so they could film that concert sequence. And there, in one of the scenes, I'm up on his shoulders, just rocking. I've still got the original ticket stub, the parking pass, the "I was there" button, all that stuff.
Really cool,
Yeah.
Of all the memories to have, this becomes a part of sort of history.
That's good stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Now, so let's talk a little bit about Dog Eat Dog. Now we're up to 1992. We could talk for hours about the success of Warrant and Cherry Pie, and I think most people know these stories. Obviously, these records were huge, and I don't want to make it into a bummer with Dog Eat Dog because music was changing, but this is a really good record, and obviously it wasn't going to get the attention that it deserved at this point. But I feel like it's a little bit of vindication for you guys also, because now you have somebody involved Michael Wagner, who gets heavier music for sure. And you guys get to play everything. The only different player on it is Scott Warren, who later was in, Heaven and Hell and Dio. Played some keyboards. But other than that, this is all you guys, and showing that you can do it.
Right. So what's the difference? What part of the pie is different? Right? So there's, look, Michael Wagner, who just retired, or as we call each other, Dudesky, is an amazing producer. And he's just one of those producers that just cultivates the band. He comes and looks at you live. He comes and sees you at pre-production. He works with you, and he just takes that and he takes it in and he does what he does. And he might push you. He might, kind of like a mad scientist vibe, just let's try this, let's try that, let's remake this, let's send, the like hole in my wall off Dog Eat Dog, the talk box in there. We did a talk box version of it where I played guitar along with the vocal. We piped the vocal, Lane's vocal back in through my talk box, and I talk boxed that. We did stuff in that record, like in April 2031. It sounds like there's a big, post-apocalyptic storm going on, and it sounds like there's a sign waving in the storm, and it's my guitar strap creaking. Wow. Stuff like that. That's just cool. In that same song, in the pre-chorus, there is it sounds like a resuscitator, like and that's actually a snorkel. We had a tattoo artist friend of ours come down with a bunch of snorkel gear because we were all going to get certified while we were making the record. Mm-hmm. And so we mic'd up the snorkel and spit through it, right for the boom. And then the spray was just hairspray. So stuff like that, outside of the actual music part, which was absolutely a blast to do. Michael did all kinds of stuff like that. There's a German choir in there. There's all kinds of stuff.
And it's great. And you definitely hear the difference in production and the creativity, and that somebody who's not maybe looking for a check or points, but somebody who really wants to make a good record. I can't help but think how ironic it is that you guys were going to get certified for diving when back in the 80s, your flyers said that you were the California's best muff diving team. So it's
cancel culture might get after us about that. We better watch out.
If you look back at Warrant, there was a lot of sexual innuendo. I think cancel culture might not have had liked all the quality that you can taste, and or the cherry pie video just wouldn't happen.
Right. You know what? It's just it was tongue in cheek the whole time. I mean, there's no misogynist in this band. There never has been. I've got a 30-year-old daughter that she should be 30 in about 3 months.
Wow.
It was just meant to get a rise out of somebody. It was our makeup, it was our Kiss makeup, so to speak. We just tried to take it to the level to where it would get a reaction out of somebody of any kind, be it if somebody actually got it, like Jeff Stein, who did the Cherry Pie video and produced, he did the Tom Petty, Don't Come Around Here No More, the Alice in Wonderland's video.
Pretty great.
He also did Quadrophenia. So he was just a beautiful, had a wild mind like Wagner, and you would get with professionals that produced like that, and you would just go on a wild ride with them. It would be a great time, a lot different, but it was always tongue in cheek. And if you got it, you got it. If you didn't, get fucked. How's that?
Yeah, I think that's a good way. We should deal with cancel culture exactly like that, to be honest. But that might be asking.
You got your Monday morning internet quarterbacks. I'm sure people will comment about this interview and find something deep. And it's look, everybody's entitled to their opinion. We roll with let's be positive and have some fun with everything. So
yeah, absolutely. And it's a different time, and women certainly weren't offended by it. People were having fun too. Going to a Warrant concert was a fun event.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and still is, and we'll get to that. But so I don't want to keep you forever. I know you got a life to live too, and getting ready to go on the road and work and all these things. So Dog Eat Dog is 1992.
Yes.
In 1994. You make the decision to leave Warrant. I believe Jenny Lane may have quit once before you left. Is that true?
He did. Yeah, we were out on the road during Dog Eat Dog tour, and he said that his throat wasn't happening and he needed to take a break. And so he got on a plane, and we thought he flew to LA to get to a throat doctor. And what he did was he flew down to Baton Rouge to go party with his wife at the time, who was hanging out with Sharice Neal. And that's when Vince did his big solo thing. So I think Janie wanted to do a solo thing, but the way it was handled wasn't cool. We took the bus back to Dallas from North Carolina, got on flights out of Dallas, went home, went to have meetings with him. He wasn't there, and it wasn't cool the way it was handled. He could have done his own solo thing on his own, and we could have taken a break. And just let's do the way Bon Jovi did it. He did a solo thing and came back to his band later. it just wasn't handled that way. And, for about 6 or 7 months, we looked for a singer, the four of us guys. And then after Janie, didn't get where he thought he was going to go with the record, he thought Columbia was going to give him a deal, but Columbia didn't give him a deal. He came back to Warrant, and we went back out on the road again.
Did you ever have a singer that you thought might be the guy?
There was one guy, his voice was great. He sounded a lot like Eric Martin. His name was Pat Briggs. I think he ended up in a band called Exotica, and he was this bisexual, beautiful freak, but he had a killer voice. And we did some demos with him, and then we were flying him back out again, and he didn't show up at the studio.
Wow.
So yeah, I think he used us for a flight out to LA so he could party with his friends. But regardless of all that, it's very difficult if band members are alive and there's a sound that those 4 or 5 people make together, just like individual fingertips make a fist,
Sure.
Then it is what it is. And when we got back together with Lane, it was fine for a while, but it was very dark.
I want to ask you, talking about Janie, when did you realize that he has a sickness? Because Janie, was an alcoholic, and he definitely had the addiction disease. There's no question. And I think later in his life, I became very common to know that people saw it was very public. But when did you first realize that he may have a problem?
It didn't creep around when we were successful, I mean, to sing like that 4 or 5 nights a week when we were playing, an hour and 15-minute sets isn't easy. So you have to take care of yourself, and he did. I think really when he started going through a divorce type of thing, it got worse and worse and worse. And it got to the point where, and to be honest with you, nobody was real healthy in the band at that point. So not pointing fingers at him or anybody else in the band. And it was during that, when we got back together and went back out on the road to do more dog eat dog stuff, that's when I really saw him take a turn for the worse. And that's when I bailed out. I pulled the plug. I was not well myself. And I'm like, if I keep doing this, there's a good possibility that I won't be able to do it for long because it's going to kill me. And I bailed out, went back to school, got educated, and just took a total, left-hand turn off the track and went into IT.
Which seemed like, and still seems like, a very smart move to do. I know a lot of bands, people were panicking. What do I do? How am I going to pay the bills? There's no pension in rock and roll. What? And so you were smart. Tech, it was in Microsoft. You got certified in Microsoft. You went to work, and that, I'm sure, it's a difficult decision to make. And Warrant did decide to continue on, and they hit the clubs and got in the van, so to speak. And that's a tough thing to see when you go from being this huge act to all of a sudden, in a lot of ways, starting over.
I don't know if that's tougher than being in a classroom with about 2 dozen pocket protecting wearing IT dudes, just in a totally just going, what am I doing? And your buddies, and you can get on the internet and look. Oh shit, they're in Pittsburgh tonight. They're in Philly tomorrow night. And I'm looking around at this, taking some certification course. So I don't know what was tougher, and I know it was very dark years, and Eric and Jerry talk about them time to time, but they kept the band going, which is a good thing. Regardless of who was in and out of the band at the time. And when it came back for me to get into it again, it was good timing for all of us.
Yeah, it was 10 years. It's good those guys kept the brand together. They kept the name, and the idea was to do Warrant, the original lineup, which was at the time, this was becoming something. There was money to be made. If you can get these original bands back together, these grunge bands, we're starting to die off. I hate to use that expression, and the bands from the hard rock scene were it was retro VH1 classic, and so you guys get it back together. So Joey, I got to tell you, the first time that we formally met, because I'd seen you in passing, but the first time we formally met was July. Hold on, let me get my date right. It says 2008. That doesn't sound right.
That's probably right. It was in Vegas.
Yeah. Okay.
At the Vegas show with Lane.
Yes. So
yeah.
I don't know who invited me. I had a pass to that show. I knew Lane a little bit. The way I got acquainted with him was through Ron Jeremy, whoever speak of cancel culture. Warrant, before you came back, they played an event called the Exotic Dancer Awards at Caesar's Palace. Okay. And I was talking to Janie. No one really cared about Warrant. There were people there for the Exotic Dancer Awards. And so Ron Jeremy told us he's going to bring us to Shaquille O'Neal's birthday party at the top of Caesar's Palace. And so I was a fan, and there's this long line and a long wait to get up this elevator. And so, Janie would open up to people and start chatting, and he showed me his driver's license to show me that his name was John Kennedy Oswald, as you know. But what an odd thing, a year before he was born, Lee Harvey Oswald kills, it's insane. So, and he was a very likable person, and I saw him a lot. So maybe he left me the passes for that show. I can't exactly remember, but I remember being backstage. This is Sunset Station. It's an outdoor gig here in Las Vegas. And you guys, the original lineup is back. People are excited. I was excited. Didn't know if it would ever happen, all 5 guys. And the backstage area was an outdoor sort of, parking lot. They had trailers around. And Janie was talking to people, and he seemed okay. And when your intro tape played for the show, I remember seeing him just throw back drinks. I mean, shots, fast, maybe 5, maybe 6. And I'm thinking, oh my God, what is this guy doing? And he was really trying to be sober, and this obviously was not going to help it. And I'll tell you, Joey, you were there, and I talked to you after the show, and the pain on your face and the pain on the band's face, it was just such a hard thing to watch. And sitting there was shocking. There wasn't one song that he sang even close to right. Most of the time he didn't sing. He just stopped. You guys would play instrumental. He would lean on you guys. He would fall. I'm telling the audience, obviously, you lived this. And he was pulling on you guys. You play a solo, and he'd tell you to play it again. He would go out into the audience, which he often did, but this time people were booing him, and he looked like somebody who was going to fall, literally fall, and it was painful. And I got the feeling that maybe you guys were thinking, we have to just get through this to get paid for one, not to have people riot or whatever. Because you guys are just looking ahead while he's falling apart and trying to do your best. And we kept hoping maybe a few songs in, he'll adjust. Show ends. Yeah. He went off into the wild. He got off the stage and literally went off into the desert.
Yeah, it's sad. It's not a money thing. A lot of people think it's a money thing, or it was a money thing, or it is a money thing, and it's not. Especially not for me. I mean, I've been in private business for 25 plus years, along with being in Warrant. Warrant, I don't want to say I'm a weekend warrior, so to speak, but Warrant's a weekend gig type of band, and we fly out and do shows that way, so I can have a gig and take care of my family and be a man and make sure I can do that. And at the time with Janie, when he was that way, you're on stage with him and you're just like, it's almost being on a bicycle going downhill, and you just want to get down the hill without, getting the speed wobbles and just completely, eating pavement, So I think that we were jamming at that show, and he would show signs of, no, and we just got through it. I don't even remember how many songs we played, if we played a full set.
It was a full set, yeah.
Did we? So probably just to get through it, and we hadn't experienced that with him, so we didn't know. We didn't know that that's what we had to deal with. We thought that, he had a problem. I remember right after that, we're back in rehab because the next weekend we had Rocklahoma, and out in Pryor, and we were headlining, and we didn't know if he was going to make it to that gig, you know. But it's horrible to see somebody that's a brother go through something like that, and you don't. What do? Do you just stop and go, see you later? Sorry, somebody's sick here. I mean, there's no playbook for that.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people can say, I would have done this, I would have done that, I would have done this. And I think at the time we were just all just as shocked as you were, probably.
You can see it on your face.
Yeah. I mean, it's horrific. It's no disrespect to the fans and the promoters and everybody out there, but when you see a person that you love have a problem like that, you don't know how to react at first at all. You know, it's outside of your complete understanding of how people, you know, because everybody's partied. Yeah. Everybody's gotten a little sloppy and slurred their words, you know, not necessarily at a gig, but, you know, that was just something, that level of problem I hadn't seen. Maybe Jerry and Eric did during the years I wasn't in there, but I hadn't seen. And once we did see that, got him into rehab, we hired a sober coach. You know, we kept all the booze out of the backstage. We did all kinds of things to try to make it better for him. AA meetings backstage before shows. You know, we wouldn't even let anybody back and meet and greet with booze on them. Mm-hmm. You know, just trying to mitigate the problem as much as possible with him. But it was just, again, you know, you saw the beginning of the end.
Yeah, I toured with a name band years later, and a similar incident happened. And I just remember, this is like a flashback, you know. But now I'm working with this band, and luckily they've fixed that problem. But yeah, you could tell that this was the beginning of the end, and you could tell that if he didn't get help, he was ultimately going to pass, and which is a really sad thing to think, because everyone wanted to help him, and he was a likable person. He wasn't from what I see. I didn't have to work with him, but he didn't come off as a mean person. He did come off as a person who was suffering.
There's some talk about what his demons were, and you know, there's. I don't want to dive into it and point fingers at anybody, any one person. You know, everybody's got an opinion. You know, it's just tragic. You know, it's tragic that you see somebody that's got that level of an issue, and there's nothing you can do to help them. There's nothing you can do. Ultimately, what we did do is we just said, you know what? We don't want this to happen when we're here. Let's end this. It's not worth the tour. It's not worth anything. And we, you know, after I think 10 or 11 shows of trying to make it work, you know, and trying to help him because he wanted to play. He wasn't going, I can't do this. It's a bad trigger. I can't tour. He's like, no, I'll do it. I'm sorry. He kept on apologizing for every misstep, you know, and even after we let him go and we got Robert in the band, he called back and he said, I want to do this again. I'm better. I'm going to be better. And we were just gun shy. We didn't want the guy dying out on the road, you know. That's horrific. It's, you know,
that's the nature of that disease. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's horrible.
I know people are hard on you guys at times. Of course, these are people who are not in your shoes, haven't lived with this situation, and you know, fans sometimes want what's best for the fans. Well, we want the original band. Well, that's nice, but some bands that can't happen. And you guys tried as hard as you could. But and Vegas wasn't the last time that he had these problems before you had to let him go. And yeah, there's all kinds of controversies about Janie's life that I don't even feel are really appropriate to dig into. You know, he's no longer here, and you know, it's obvious that he'd been through a lot. And ultimately, you know, he passes away in a hotel room with a note that says, I'm Janie Lane, and a phone number. I mean, this is really a tragic way for somebody who was once this really, you know, huge rock star and good person and a family man and a man who has children, and to pass with that lonely. How did you find out that Janie passed?
You know, first of all, I mean, it's tragic for the family. It's tragic for his brothers and his sisters and his daughters. You know, that's just tragedy. That's the tragic part, and his band brothers. You know, um, the music part and all this other part is just part of a separate part of who the guy was. You know what I mean? We were in North Dakota playing a gig. We had a night off, and so we were all out to eat. And my phone rang, and it was Jeff Blando from Slaughter and Vince
Yeah.
Neil's band, who's just a good friend of all of ours, and he just started apologizing. I'm so sorry, and I'm like, what are you talking about? You know, because it was literally 7 where we were and 5 in LA, and the news hadn't gotten out yet. And so he told me, and I said, you know, he said, "Oh my God, you don't know," and I said, "No, I do now." And he apologized for being the one to tell me, but I said, "Dude, I love you. Sorry, you know, God bless him." And I hung up the phone and I looked around the table and I just told everybody. And it was just, you know, unbelievable. You're not, even though you know somebody's that ill, you're not prepared for that by any means. And I remember just everybody's phone like 10 minutes later blowing up, you know? And then we all just that night, it was horrible. I mean, we were sitting around just in disbelief, you know, and trying to muster up something. You know, we got to say something. People are gonna, if we don't say something, you know, oh my God. So we tried to write something as eloquent as possible for the time, and we put it out. And it's horrible. Anybody that loses I've never lost anybody. You know, I lost my father last year in October. My father was in his 80s. I luckily, because of COVID, I was around him a lot, took him to the doctor the last while. So we were able to have all those conversations as two people that love each other can have before somebody passes, you know? So even though he passed, you know, and it's horrible, it was a closed book. We were good, you know, and he wasn't afraid to die. And I wasn't afraid to be here without him. Miss him still terribly. When somebody's taken from you like Janie was, it's unbelievable. That's the best way I can say it, and not in a good way. You know, you're like, no, 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 that's not right. You know, and then you scramble to try to process. You know, it's losing a brother. It's like losing a brother to a car wreck or a fire or what. You know, there's all kinds of ways people pass, and it's horrible. It's horrific still. You know, I feel horrible for his family. You know?
Yeah, and you know, Janie Lane will always be part of the Warrant legacy. I mean, he wrote
Absolutely
the majority of the songs, and you guys keep that legacy alive. His music is alive, and I've got to say, and rest in peace to Janie. You know, like you said, such a tragedy. But I've got to say that I think that Robert Mason, when you guys added him to the band, was really the best tribute to Janie. First of all, he was friends with Janie, which is a good thing. But I felt like, and I'll tell you, I didn't really get Jamie St. James personally. I just didn't get it. I remember seeing you guys with him, and I just said, I love the fact that the 4 guys are here, and I'm sure Jamie St. James is great at Black and Blue and what he does, but it didn't feel like Warrant to me. And then comes Robert Mason, and boy, does he! And he's been on the show, and we've talked about this, but he really handles it with respect. The band handles it with respect. He does the songs that the fans want to hear. I feel like Warrant was one of the smart bands of the genre to come out and say, we're going to give you guys these hit songs you want to hear. We're going to give you some of the deep cuts like Mr. Rainmaker. To me, it was so exciting to hear some of those songs off the first 2 albums and Dog Eat Dog that we might not have heard before, and not saying, well, we're going to stuff new music down your throat. Now, you guys did make new records, and they were successful, and people enjoy that music. But as you know, most people go to a show and they want to relive something, and they want to have that good time. And I believe that Warrant, I believe Warrant did that. I believe that Warrant does that. And I think that people who go out and see you guys will not be disappointed. And Janie Lane is not here. You know, it's sad, but that ends the argument. He's not here. And so Warrant as a band has to continue. The Warrant band existed before him, and it will still continue to exist. The music that he created with you exists. And so I think that people will enjoy Warrant. It does not feel like a cash grab by any means.
Well, it's not a cash grab. Like I said before, I've got for me personally, I've had a career for quite some time outside of Warrant. I do Warrant because I love it. My brothers in the band do it because they love it. Mason does it because he loves it. Unfortunately and tragically so, Lane isn't here anymore. So that does end that conversation. But, I'd be amiss to say that, growing up, I was a Van Halen fan. I wasn't as much of a Van Hagar fan as I was a Van Halen fan. Mm-hmm. I totally respect Van Hagar, and I'm not one of those guys that says, I'm not going to go see Van Halen because Sammy's in the band, and Dave's not there. I'm not that guy. There's just two different things going on there, and you have to pay legacy. What's the best word I'm looking for? You have to pay respect to the legacy of the hit songs. You have to play them as close to the records as you can, because that's what the people want to hear. Most of the people don't even know the names of the musicians in the band. They never knew the names of the musicians in the band. And not very many people know, wow, there's 4 out of 5 original guys up there. They look at me and they're like, who's the guy that looks like Mr. Clean up there, right?
We
it's
forget.
funny when I do interviews. Huh?
No, I would say we forget how casual the audience really is. The first time around, yes, people have their Metal Edge magazine or whatever. But this time around, people are coming to the state fair because they know Cherry Pie or their family knows it. And that's great too. Maybe they'll be turned on to you guys.
And they want to have a fun time, and you have a total responsibility to give them a great show. So that's where we're coming from. And it's even like now that we're going back out on tour finally after, 15, 16 months of being down because of the pandemic. I've been going back through, these first 2-3 records with a fine-tooth comb and just getting everything as tight as I possibly can. And it's going to be great. I mean, we really do care about what we do. We pay huge props to the legacy of this band and the first 3 records that Janie wrote. We also play some newer stuff that we've done with Mason since then.
Yeah, you've recorded 2 albums with Robert Mason.
Yep, 2 albums with Robert, and we play at least 1 or 2 tunes off of one of them. And we just want to go out and have a good time and enjoy what we do. Why we can still do it. And
I'm showing Cherry Pie again because you guys, before the pandemic began, you were on the 30th anniversary of Cherry Pie. You guys were celebrating. Are you playing the entire record?
Yes, we are, but not from front to back because that record starts with Cherry Pie. So every song that's on the original release will be played live. And that we're not leaving anything off. There was talk about leaving the cover Train off. And then I think Ricky Medlock would be a little pissed off at us. So nobody wants to piss off Ricky Medlock. So we're going to pull out Train.
You got to play the record. I'll tell you quickly two quick anecdotes about playing the record. I was working with the drummer for Rat.
Yes.
As we played some shows with Warren also. And a million stories just ran to my mind about that. But so he wanted to play a record from cover to cover. And then he would say, I don't want to play that one. And then he would say, well, I don't want to play that one. And I don't want to play this one. And then we said, well, now you're playing, 7 out of 10. That doesn't look the same on the Billboard. And he goes, no one's going to know. Meanwhile, these Rat records, if you're a fan, you know them. And the fans are there holding their records. They have a score sheet. So that was an interesting thing. And then he would say the reason he didn't want to play one is he would say, that's a Steven song. And later I said that to Steven. And he goes, they're all my fucking songs. What is he talking about?
I know those guys well. Listen, it's like I hook up to all these bands. If their original members are still alive, it would behoove every one of them to just bury it, figure it out, get the original guys together, as many of them as you can, and go out and have a good time, and get rid of the childish bullshit that happens in emotional shit that happens. It's a business. At the end of the day,
Yes.
it's a business, and the people want to hear what it sounds. I mean, there's been that version of Rat sounded good. Okay, sounded good. But I grew up, the first time I saw Rat, Jakey Lee was in the band. I opened up for him when Jakey Lee was in the band, and Warren DeMartini was Enforcer, with Rob Lamuth from River Dogs. But Rat is Rat to me. Same thing about the Dave Lee Roth and the Sammy Hagar, and everybody's great. I mean, Jakey Lee's great, and but it would behoove all those bands just to suck it up and try it once, because it works for us.
And I think they're trying, but it's better for the whole scene, by the way. When you have a package show, because now there's a lot of package shows, the more original lineup bands, I think the stronger the package, the stronger the ticket, and it benefits everybody. But we're talking about Cherry Pie, and possibly you were thinking about Train. Another band I worked with, Winger, they were not sure about Purple Haze. Red Beans, you got to be kidding me! I got to play Purple Haze every night, But and it really took a minute to say, you can't. If you're saying you're playing the record, you've got to play the record, and they did, and did very well with it. And we should point out they had their original,
Yeah, great band.
And so, and you guys will probably be playing a lot of shows because of this 30th anniversary. You guys are doing a lot of shows now. Warrant is a band that would play about 50 shows a year, and that is good for people watching at home. This is not like the old days anymore. You don't get on a tour bus and live on the road. And especially people like yourself have a job, real business that they run. And it's great to be a rock star for the weekend. What better thing? But, someone told me once, you get paid to wait in the airport. The concert's free, so you take all these flights and you go to all these places. But Warrant has done well. You've kept your guarantee good. Your crew is together. You guys know what you're doing. And it continues. And so you have a bunch of dates coming up. As this is airing, they're going to start the next 3 months. Pretty much, it looks like every weekend solid you guys are playing. And how great is that after being home for so long for a lot?
It's refreshing. I'm leaving on Wednesday for rehearsals in Dallas. And it's going to be the first time in 16 months that we've all been in the same room. So it'll be refreshing. We just want to make sure everybody's healthy, and that the crowds that come out, everybody's healthy and nobody gets hurt. Just like anything, nobody wants anybody to get hurt. But, to say that we're not dying to play some fucking music, would be an understatement. I mean, I think all of our friends that are out, some of them have been started the gig, and we're all looking on our phones at their video feeds and going, is anybody showing up? How do they sound? Do they look older? Is anybody walking with a cane? That we think might have to. And I'm really looking forward to seeing everybody out there. And I'm sure there's going to be some great music involved from all the bands, man. So there's a bunch of different shows we're playing with different bands, from everybody from Dawkins to Winger to Vixen to Autograph to Kicks to you name it.
It's a lot of fun. You get to see a lot of fun, and you get to see bands on these packages that maybe you missed the first time around. So I think it's a lot of good for everybody. Before I let you go, we got to mention Louder, Harder, Faster. This is the last Warrant release. This is still a few years old now. And so people can get this. We're going to link all Warrant's music down below so people can pick this up and catch up on it if they missed it. This is with Robert Mason singing, and of course the 4 original members of Warrant. Bo Hill had nothing to do with this, so you're getting nothing but Warrant. And what about new music? I know everyone's been on hold, so it's hard to even think about it. But do you think there's another Warrant record to come?
It'd be nice just to put another one out in the next year or two. I don't think I haven't been writing in the last year, to be honest with you. I was just busy working and navigating with the family and making sure that everybody was safe and sane. But, there's a lot of creative guys in this band. So I would imagine that some guys have written, and that, once things start to throw around, we'll probably find somebody to produce it and get in the studio and go for it. We worked with Keith Olsen on Rockaholic. He's no longer with us. Keith did. God, look at that guy. He sold over 100 million records with different records he produced. We worked with Pilson on Louder, Harder, Faster. Jeff Pilson's amazing.
Yep.
He's in Foreigner now and doing his thing, and he's a great producer. So it'd be nice. I just think right now the concentration's on getting a good live show together. And I mean, it's the first time, Jason, that we've rehearsed since I got back in the band, right? Because we play 50 dates a year, so you're always playing 2 or 3 shows a month. You're playing the same songs you've been playing for 30 years. Sooner or later, you get good at it, right? Hopefully, that's the idea.
Mm-hmm.
But when you take a 16 months off because there's a global pandemic, you got to rehearse. So,
it's probably the longest you went without playing since you left Warrant the first time. I mean, without playing live.
Absolutely. And I've been practicing a lot in the last month and a half. And it wasn't too bad starting out. And then, as a player, and this as much as I do, you reach plateaus, like you'll get to a certain level as a player. And then you're like, okay, I'm there for a little while and and then the next day you'll pick it up and you're like, oh, I stepped up here. And you get to that next plateau. And I'm at the plateau now where I can nail the set live better than I ever have. I'm healthy. I'm working on losing a little bit of the COVID weight, because
aren't we all?
There was some cocktails and some food had. I can't say that I'm down 12 pounds. I got I'm where I was last time I toured. How's that? But I want to go down another 20 because I work in a band with a bunch of skinny dudes. So I don't want to be the token hefty guy up there.
Yeah, no, I believe me, I hear you. Well, I really appreciate you spending some time. I say wasting time, but I feel like we covered some things that people haven't talked about a million times. I think if you're a Warrant fan, you certainly got some really cool history of the band. And I really appreciate you spending the time and sharing that stuff with us.
Well, when you hit me, you're a dear friend, and I know the other guys in the band. So thanks for the opportunity. Cool. I hope we cleared the air for some people. They can go back to their daily lives and not worry about who did what on a Warrant record. And
they were losing sleep, Joey.
I'm telling you, man, it's very important stuff.
People were analyzing the left and the right with their headphones on, and now they know. And now I know why Eric hasn't responded to me, because he's like, "There's no way I want to talk about this shit again."
Well, I'll tell him I took the hit for him. Now he'll get.
Yes, now he's that. And Jerry is, out with the ducks and the parrots. He's probably not too far from my house.
I think the ducks aren't. I think the coyotes got the ducks, Jason.
Oh man, that's terrible.
Yeah, duck soup.
Yeah, well, the parrots are okay, I hope. Joey, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jason. We'll see you soon, my brother. Give Johnny and Max a big hug for me, would you?
I will, absolutely. Thank you.